Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Hello, welcome, and good morning to the Compassion Project, where we examine institutionalized trauma and find ways to explore how we can ignite a compassion evolution. My name is Dr. Danielle Lord. I am your hostess, and this morning I'm very happy to be joined by my friend Seamus Cory, all the way from England. So you get to listen to Seamus's wonderful Irish accent all morning this morning as we have our conversations. So very happy to introduce you to Seamus, and he is the Chief Wellbeing Officer. There you are. Hi, good morning.
Good morning, Danielle. How are you?
I am doing well, thank you. And I was thinking as I said that, I don't think anyone in the history of the world has ever said, I can't wait to hear someone's American accent.
I love your American accent. I love your American accent. Just keep talking to me. I absolutely love it. I absolutely love it.
All right, so here we are, and thank you so much for being with us this morning. So I don't like to read a bio. I think it's a little bit impersonal. So what I like to do is hear from you, your heart, and what brought you to this space of working in compassion, and particularly being the Chief Wellbeing Officer. So
thank
please
you.
share.
Danielle, and thank you for having me on your show this morning. It's a real privilege for me to be here. I don't think the show is long enough to give you my full-blown history and background. I think we would need many shows for that. But to give you a kind of summative view of what has brought me to the work that I'm doing, particularly around the areas of well-being, mental health, and compassion. I suppose I grew up in the Republic of Ireland. I grew as part of a strong Irish Catholic family. At 3 months old, I was chosen to become a Roman Catholic priest as the family's representative, as it were. At 16, I went off to become a Roman Catholic priest, so went off to Catholic seminary. Was subjected to 7 years of horrific institutional trauma and abuse there. Came out, after 7 years, was ordained a priest. spent 15 months in ministry, working in local community, and then suddenly woke up one morning. I didn't want to do it anymore. Didn't know what was going on with me. Felt as if I was going through a real profound mental health crisis, and I think I was. It was a mental health episode. I got some support, got some help for that, got some counseling initially, counseling in inverted commas, from the Roman Catholic Church. That turned out to be, really horrific debriefing sessions that took place over a period of time. It was eventually discovered that I didn't have the personality type for priesthood and that I should resign, which I duly did. Once I did that, I was extricated from my family home. My family turned their back on me. Community turned their back on me. I became isolated, homeless, countryless, and I became an immigrant in the series of about 5 to 6 odd weeks. Eventually moved to the UK and moved to Scotland in '96. The 29th of April 1996 at 5 to 6 in the evening. I'll never forget that time because that's when my plane touched down in Edinburgh Airport. And from then on, it's been a real life experience of getting to know me, getting to know who I am in a country that I didn't know, in a country that didn't know me. I essentially, during the first part of that arrival, didn't have a national security number, as you would call it, a social security number. So I was effectively a non-person. I couldn't claim any benefits. I couldn't claim any help. I couldn't claim any support. And yeah, I found myself in a very difficult place. And through my life, I have struggled with the effects of trauma. I've struggled with the effects of abuse. I have received treatment and support from that. I've had, one or two mental health crises along the way. But today I'm coming to you. I feel well. I feel good. And as I said already, Danielle, I'm happy to speak about anything because I firmly believe that opening up and speaking about trauma, the more we can help and support people, like I do right now in terms of my well-being work, the less of a stigma that people will have about opening up. So if they are traumatized and needing help and support, and if they listen to my story, then it hopefully might resonate with them somehow.
That is a lot to unpack, and I
warned you, Danielle. I don't think the show is long enough.
I can't imagine what it must have been like. So there's a couple things here that's going through my mind. First is that I can't imagine what that must have been like at coming to the conclusion that I don't know who I am. And those are my words, right? When we're groomed to be in the position of a priest representing the family from 3 months old. Wow. That is, that's fascinating. And then to be at the hands of receiving care from the perpetrators of the abuse. And then I think at the root of all of it is this realization that this institution that we hold on high, the church, right, if you will, and that probably spreads to multiple denominations, but this institution that we hold in such high regard for being the very space that we should go to receive compassion and kindness and care and healing is actually the place that was the one who perpetrated all of this abuse. That's got to be profoundly difficult for people to hear.
And absolutely, yes. Yes, it is. And the Ireland that I came out of in the 60s and 70s was still very strongly Catholic. To some extent now, because of the advances in social media and because the advances in changes in culture in Ireland, it's a different story now. The Catholic Church, quite rightly, is on the back foot. But for a long time, they held sway and they held power and they held a complete control over the population in terms of the Irish population who were Catholic in Ireland. And, you know, and I was part of that. I was part of that process.
Wow. That in and of itself has got to be something that you have to come to terms with as well. So it's kind of a compounding effect. This to me is absolutely why I say we are experiencing institutionalized trauma. I mean, when you think about the tenure of the Catholic Church within globally within our world, to know that this has been going on for probably this long is exactly where it all stems from. It really truly is the root of the institutionalized trauma that we are all collectively globally experiencing right now.
Yeah.
So in terms of the work that you do now, so Chief Wellbeing Officer, and I love that title. I want to take it for myself. but how do you see, or do you see parallels? So when you go into an organization and work with an organization to help them create a better, more receptive space for people to come in and be human in the workspace, do you see parallels now, having been through that experience in seminary? Yeah. So share a little bit about that.
Absolutely. In terms of my experience working with organizations right now, I see two distinct different types of organizations that I work with. I see, you know, a very much a triangular approach organization where you've got the chief executive and you've got the leadership, you know, team at the top, very much them versus us, you know, which would very much, you know, equate to my own experience, where you had the, you know, the top echelon, you had the professors at the top, where it'd be the seminary, you had the hierarchy at the top, and you were at the very low ebb. Then for me, you know, coming in as part of the hierarchy, I then still found myself at the bottom because I kind of had to work up to some degree of respect. But I also see organizations who recognize that triangular process it no longer fits and no longer works. So it's pretty much about, you know, they're not scared to ask the questions that require change. They're not scared to look at institutionalized trauma in the face and support people through that. And for those organizations who I've had the privilege of working at and working with, you know, to support that process and to support that cultural change has been an enormous benefit to me, seeing the healing, but also for the organizations themselves see the growth and see the development and see themselves where they really should be and are currently operating in.
That's fantastic to hear that some are embracing that change and recognizing it. And, you know, so part of the work that I did in terms of getting my PhD was to study organizational theory. And so we studied a lot of the history of how organizations emerged in our modern world. And a lot of them did come out of Britain, right? The Industrial Revolution, when the machinery came in and it was all hail the machine and who cares about the people? It seems like that still has such a hold on us in our modern organizations. So it's kind of interesting to draw those parallels from England and think about how it has kind of, that culture has permeated the organizations of the world. Yeah, so it's nice and encouraging to hear that there is a shift in that going on.
I think absolutely, Danielle, and I think the biggest shift, I think, and the biggest kind of explosion and the biggest nuclear bomb that went off for everybody, to pardon the pun, in terms of organizations, the length and breadth of the UK, but also globally across the world, it's something that we all experienced together, and that was the pandemic.
I agree.
Post-pandemic, there has been a sea change in terms of development, in terms of how organizations approach themselves, approach their staff teams, and how they approach this as it were, this traditional view that you work 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, you did 37 and a half hours, you know, you put it all on the block, and then you went home at the weekend, you recovered, and then you come back on Monday morning to do it again, right?
Yeah.
That's changed fundamentally. That's changed fundamentally, and how people work has changed fundamentally. I think the advent of technological platforms such as the one we're on right now, together with Zoom and Teams and all these other digital platforms, which allow people to collaboratively work together, but not necessarily have to be in the same space, is an interesting viewpoint. And that's opened up exploration and questioning around, actually, do I really need to be in the workplace, a physical workspace, or or can I work from a space that best suits me? It's an interesting question.
Yeah, I agree with you completely that the pandemic really did reshape. I think once we got over the initial shock of it, of being home, we had this realization that, wow, this is kind of nice, right? I'm not struggling with this workday of having to be in a container of space and a container of time, and I don't have that container bookended by a frustrating commute. So I think that really people were very much opened up to that idea of, is there a better way? So I'm so glad to hear that folks are realizing that there is indeed a better way. So I had a really interesting experience. Just this week, I was going to a trade show and found myself having to be at a certain place in time. Meant I had to get up early, meant I had to be on the road in the dark and the rain with all of the other stressed out drivers, and going to a strange place and lugging all my stuff in. And I woke up the next morning and I thought, I feel completely beat up. And I wonder, are we all just kind of functioning in this kind of stress-induced state without really realizing it? How do you see that playing out from your work?
I think the traumatic effects of what we've all experienced vis-a-vis the pandemic are still we're still working through those, Danielle. I don't think we're out the other side of that yet. And as people start to come out the other side of that, people are asking fundamental questions about how they work and the types of work that they do and where they work and the amount of time that they give to work. And I think there's bigger questions being asked about work-life balance and how that might work. I'd like to cite the work of Dr. Ellen Joan Ford, a wonderful colleague and friend of mine who in New Zealand at the moment is flying the flag globally, and to really convince organizations that the work-life balance that we so rigidly hold on to, has to incorporate some degree of flexibility whereby parents, for example, with young children have the opportunity maybe to work school hours. And this is our focus, having this ability to organizationally work around, rearing children, which was traditionally in the traditional workplace, the viewpoint of the woman in the household. Now that's changed. Occupations have changed organizationally, and now for those parents who have young children, um, not to feel guilty about it or to approach it differently. Ellen Ford, quite rightly, is asking the question: can organizations fundamentally change their working practices to allow people, with parents with young children, work around that school schedule, work around that college schedule, to yes, get the best out of them productively, but also be able to be there for their family and not feel guilty about working all the hours that God gives. There's some really fascinating questions being asked at the moment, and I think we're entering into a phase of organization development that I think is going to fundamentally change the landscape over the next 3 to 5 years. I don't know what your take on is looking at it from a research point of view, but I think there are fundamental changes and fundamental questions being asked, which will lead to fundamental changes quicker than we imagine.
I certainly hope so, because we are seeing, at least in the States, and I believe it's globally, that employee engagement is at the lowest it's ever been.
Yeah.
And I like to say to folks that we've been telling employees that your voice matters. Take the survey, because your voice matters. And at the same time, for 30 years, we've done nothing with it. So, and we haven't, we would think after 30 years that we'd start to see a tick up in employee engagement, but actually we've seen a precipitous downfall. So I really do think that this is the time and space where employees are going to start to stand up and say, no, we're done. We're done being treated like this. We're done having to fit within a very small parameter of your set of expectations around time as the measure of productivity. You know, just a very human experience. We all have different circadian rhythms. I'll take my 9 hours of sleep, please.
Yeah.
And I work best in the morning. So why don't we allow, as we can, allow for people to function in that time or the time and space where they function the best. So
absolutely, I fully agree with you, and I'm going to mention you know, 2 letters right now that's going to send fear into many organizations, and that's been the development of AI and the speed of development of AI across organization development. And you know, as an apprentice chat GPT, you know, aficionado myself, I can see the power that brings. I can see the, you know, the development that brings, but it's also really scary for people. And you've had some backdraft in terms of, you know, you've seen it in Hollywood, you've seen it, you know, amongst the Actors Guilds, seen it amongst the screenwriters who are really fearful about their jobs because they feel it's going to be taken over by AI. You know, and I don't know if similarly, you know, globally, and certainly in the UK, there is that persistent fear out there at the moment that AI is going to be one of these uncontrollable forces that are effectively is going to diminish the traditional workplace, because there won't be a need for coders, there won't be a need for writers, there won't be a need for designers, because ultimately AI is going to do it all, right?
Is a little frightening when we are in this space of talking about compassion, is how do we ensure then that we maintain this space and container of compassion and when we do turn over a lot of the work to AI. And I know that we recently had a port or dock, I think they were not the dock work, but the longshoremen here in some of our ports in the United States who were saying, you know what, we don't want AI coming in and taking over our jobs. And so, yeah, I think this is kind of the next bastion of conversations within organizations, certainly.
But there is the key, Danielle. There's the key. A human to human contact cannot ever replace AI.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Having conversations on a one-to-one with individuals, having that human connection with people can never fully replace your AI technology. AI technology will never be able to fully replace that. And certainly what I'm passionate about and what my work is about as a well-being consultant working with organizations is to enable organizations begin, engage, and continue those conversations around what's the best for those organizations that I work with, but to ensure also that organizations are compassionate, that organizations do have a well-being focus, and they are focused on the people that really matter, and that's the staff who work for them, not just the productivity, not just the bottom line, or not just what's not the next big badge, the next big performance indicator, but actually people.
Yes.
And it goes back to what I do well, and I think I do it well. I think more so now. We live in an age of information overload. We live in an age of 365. days a year, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, information coming at you from all circles, right? On any device imaginable. I don't know, I grew up in a time once, Danielle, where you only had 2 TV stations. Those TV stations went off at 11 o'clock at night. Silent.
I remember those days. Yes.
You switched it off.
Yeah, and you had time. You had time to spend in your own head and time to spend with others. Yeah.
Yeah, you had, and I think that's what's required. And I think if we're talking about compassion, if we're talking about what's really important and what we really should prioritize as a humanity, I think it's actually being more available for people, being more compassionate, and listening more to people. That way, I think you get more out of people.
I agree completely. My husband works in a large industrial area, and he takes care of the equipment. And some of this equipment is like the size of a room. It's pretty big stuff. But even he says, we spend more time thinking about how the equipment is functioning than we spend thinking about how our team members are functioning. And I think
Isn't that crazy?
Yes. It's a pretty sad state, for sure.
You'll put oil on the machine and you'll pay for oil on the machine. But some organizations, won't pay for a little bit of well-being support. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. It's that long-standing mantra that has existed in organizations for so long that is, well, that's your own stuff, right? We shouldn't have anything to do with the stuff.
Don't bring it to work, right?
Don't bring it to work. Don't bring it to work. Exactly. Yeah. But we have to really begin to think about the whole person that comes into 100%. The whole system of the organization. And there's a connection that just can't be broken there. And
failure to do that will end up in institutional trauma.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the very fact that we have existed as employees in this space for as long as we have really does create the sense of, yes, it's another part of institutionalized trauma for certain.
It is. Yeah, absolutely, because you disregard it at your peril, because what you're going to end up then is that if it remains the status quo, if it just remains traditional and keep your personal stuff at the door, please don't bring that to work. We don't want to hear that here. That in itself is a form of institutional trauma, right?
Yeah, I agree. I don't care enough about you to hear what it is that's ailing you in the moment.
No, I don't. Yeah. I don't want to know. Just get on and do your job. Yeah. I don't want to know. And that's where institutional trauma sets in.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that it's a huge differentiator between managers and leaders as well, right? Because it doesn't take any sense of authenticity or vulnerability to say, "Oh my gosh, Seamus, are you okay today? Something doesn't seem quite right." Whereas a manager who's just concerned about the productivity and the schedule and the priorities, it's very easy to just brush that aside and say, "Just go do your job."
Absolutely. Absolutely, 100%. And yes, you're there to do a job. You've got a contract of employment. You've got roles and responsibilities. You've got boundaries. But actually, the less human we are at work, the less human you will be. And we're not robots. We're not mechanical creatures. Actually,
we're not the AI.
We're not the AI. We're not the problem.
Right.
But actually, if you choose to ignore the problem, if there is one, then it becomes a problem. I often feel that if you there's a saying out there. I don't know who coined it, and please don't sue me, but it says that if you ignore your wellness, you're going to have to deal with your illness.
Yeah, a lot to unpack in that. If you ignore your wellness, you're going to have to deal with your illness.
You're going to have to deal with it. The body's going to speak volumes. If wellness, internal wellness, isn't looked after. If you don't put
Absolutely.
that internal oil on your own machine, then at some stage, that machine's going to break down, right?
Yes. Yeah. This human machine, is going to
Yeah.
break down. So, Dr. Jacqueline, our producer, pulled up your book here just a minute
Oh,
ago. Why don't
wow.
you tell us a little bit about that?
That was a unique, fascinating experience into the world of writing, and I joined with 12 other wonderful authors for a masterclass led by the amazing Lonnie Ray, who produced, who basically, uh, and she argues the point quite well, actually, that you may not have the capacity to write a whole book, but you will have the capacity to write a chapter. And this issue, volume 11, coincides with Mental Health Awareness Month in the States and Suicide Awareness Month in the States. And the stories in that book, have been curated and developed and written by people who have been there, done that, and worn the T-shirt. Who I have the honor of not only calling co-authors, but who are also within my own friendship group. And together we've produced, I think, an amazing work. My own story is in there of how I came to discover my true journey and my true self, the beginnings of it. It's not all there because I'm leaving that out from my own book, which hopefully will be published by Phenom Publishing in June or July of next year. It's going to be called, breaking news. There should be a breaking news caption across the front. It's going to be called The Gospel According to Seamus, and it's going to have my own story in there, mixed in with well-being guidance, advice, and signposts, and hopefully that may help and support people who find themselves maybe in not an extreme position as myself, but who might need help and support, and where to go for that help and support to support them on their own well-being journey. So I'm looking forward to that coming out in June or July of next year.
Oh, exciting. I love the title. And I love the fact that you can share your own story of resilience to help others find a way and see hope.
I firmly believe, Danielle, that the only way to support people is being honest, open, authentic, and transparent with people, right? And I think if they see that, if they see your authenticity, if they see your transparency, if they see your honesty, that inspires people to become maybe just a little bit more authentic, a little bit more honest, and a little bit more upfront themselves. And it enables the breakdown and stigma that we all have about, maybe we are not in the right place. Maybe we do need help and support. And if people, because of listening to my story or reading my story or reading Rattled Awake or reading my own book when it comes out, are able to get that support, well, I've done my job.
I love it. And I think that as we continue to see people open up about that and have or bring their own vulnerability into the workplace, I think that our own mirror neurons, right, will begin to adopt, accept, and mimic that behavior rather than that rigidity that we've seen for so many years, and that stoicism. Yeah,
absolutely. I fully agree. But it takes courage, and it takes persistence, and it takes consistency. But it takes. I have said to some CEOs, and I've said to some leadership teams, if you're going to ask the question, you got to be prepared for the answers coming back.
Absolutely.
And don't be precious around what you hear. Some of it might be positive, some of it might be negative. But actually collaboratively working together to produce a cultural based organization strategy based on wellness and well-being will be able to deliver the outcomes that you need and actually take you to where you need to be quicker than if you were to ignore it in the first place.
I firmly believe that. So we only have a few minutes left. This conversation went way too fast. Where can folks
Okay.
find you, find your work? I know our producer, Dr. Jacqueline, has put your website up a couple of times. So tell us a little bit more about where folks can find you.
Thank you, Dr. Jacqueline, for putting up my website. My website, www.seamuscory.co.uk, it gives you a little bit of background, knowledge and understanding, as well as a little bit about my own story. It also has in there quite a number of resources and key themes, but also some really good books that I've read. I've also, Danielle, since we've last spoken, become a bit of a podcaster. So I've just wrapped series 1 of Wellbeing with Seamus, which are stories about hope, joy, peace,
Love it.
understanding, journey, which gives you an opportunity to listen into other people's stories, not just me. You don't hear my voice all the time, but you hear real stories, real people who are really making a difference out there in the world. I'm following that up, and I'm just going to be launching in the next couple of weeks my podcast series, series 2, which is all going to be focused on mental health matters. And again, it's going to focus on some real people, some real stories with real recovery insights behind it, and it's inspirational. It's inspirational for people. So if
Yes.
you want to get any of that podcast stuff, you'll be able to find it on my YouTube channel. Just check out Seamus Cory PYP, or my Spotify channel, Wellbeing with Seamus, and it's there for people if they want to get at it. Obviously, I've got my book as well, Rattled Awake, Volume 11.
Great title.
So yeah, the mental health edition. So that's available on Amazon. But I'm also hopefully creating a space on Amazon for my own book, which will come out next year. So watch the space for that one.
Very good. So in our remaining few minutes here, final question. How do we break out of this cycle? Knowing through your story and your experience that this has been going on for a long, long time, how do we break out of it? Are we just naturally inclined to be awful to one another, awful to ourselves, or is there a chance for us to do something different? And what does that look like?
I love that. I love that question, Danielle. And once upon a time, I used to cycle a bicycle, and due to an unfortunate accident, an unfortunate series of events, I no longer had that bicycle. But one of the things which also shattered my nose, by the way, so you can see the little. I should have a point that goes something like that, but it goes something like that. It's quite unique. But the one thing I noticed, learned from that experience, is that if you're gonna just cycle the bike, you're just gonna cycle the bike, and you're just gonna keep going, right? But you've got to put something in the spoke in the wheel of the tire to stop the bicycle if you want to change. And it's the same with institutionalized approaches to traditional workplaces. If you're gonna do it, you got to firstly put that stick of asking that question into the spoke of the wheel of the tire of that bicycle, which is your organization, and ask, why do we need to do that way? Is there another way to do it? Is there another way to connect with people? Is there another way to support people? And when you start asking questions like that, it's funny what happens in terms of the answers you might get back.
Great advice. So ask those questions. Be curious.
Ask questions. Be curious and be open.
Absolutely. That's the key right there for all of our leaders. Well, it has been fantastic to catch up with you again. And we've got to have another conversation, because I think we could take a much deeper dive into our organizations and institutionalized trauma. And hopefully this kind of cemented the root of where we're at right now in our world, and we can take Seamus's great advice and put the spoke in the wheel so that we can all begin to spark that compassion evolution. So thank you so much to our producer, Dr. Jacqueline, and the team at USA Global TV and Radio. And please stay tuned and listen into what our sponsors are going to share at the end. And it was great to have you, all of our listeners, as well as Seamus. So until next month, we'll be talking to you then. Thank you.
We face daily cyber risks, spending over 7 hours of screen time, including 4.5 hours on mobile phones. This convenience comes with significant dangers, with cybercrime costs predicted to exceed $10.5 trillion by 2025. In 2023 alone, seniors lost over $3.4 billion to cybercrime. Our goal is to make social engineering concepts of cybersecurity easier to understand. We work with business teams, senior living facilities, investment companies, and educational institutions, both individually and in groups. We offer real-life examples to help you recognize and prevent attacks, with sessions available both in person, in selected regions, and remotely. Schedule your training session, or to learn more, contact us today. Call us at 847-845-9360. Email us at info@cybersecurityeasy.com. Protect your team and family with cybersecurityeasy.com.
My name is Dr. Felix Kravitz, and I am the founder of cybersecurityeasy.com, LLC. We live in a world full of vulnerabilities and cyber risks. We spend almost 4.5 hours a day on our mobile phones. It's over 7 hours of screen time daily when including computer use. We often forget that this convenience comes with risks. Published data predicts that the cost of cybercrime will exceed $10.5 trillion in 2025. These numbers encompass not only businesses, but also each one of us, including our children and our parents. In 2023, the FBI reported over $3.4 billion lost by seniors aged 60 and older. Cybersecurityeasy.com LLC's initiative is to massively support the community by providing cyber safety coaching and improving social engineering awareness. Our goal is to make social engineering concepts of cybersecurity easier to understand. We work with business teams, seniors, and educational institutions, both individually and in groups. We cover various topics from phone phishing attacks to AI-generated voice cloning, robocalls, password protection, and more using life examples. Talk to us today. Call us at 847-845-9360 or email us at info@cybersecurityeasy.com.
5 little known secrets for dementia caregivers with Tracy Cram-Perkins.
Hi there, I am Tracy Cram-Perkins, the host of the Dementia Home Care Show here on USA Global TV and Radio. I am also the author of the book of the same name. And you'll see this QR code. This is for an extended version of the same talk. So if you want to see the full hour-long version, feel free to scan the code and go to that website. Stick with me. We'll talk about 5 little known secrets to make it a little easier to do dementia caregiving. What you're seeing on the left-hand side is a healthy aged brain, age 55 and above. The one you're seeing on the right is an Alzheimer's disease brain. It is in moderate disease. It is shrinking. It has holes in it. The memories that were in those holes no longer exist. When you're learning something, let's say in kindergarten, you learn how to tie your shoelace. Well, then by the time you're in 2nd grade, your brain remembers that information from tying the shoelace and applies it so you can learn more quickly how to tie more complex knots. So the brain is hardwired to do this for us, so it helps us learn faster so it doesn't take us long to acquire knowledge. The brain is looking for the information and they pick the closest to wherever that hole is. Let's look at some tips that we can use to help do that. These are 5 simple tools you can use as a dementia caregiver to help your loved one. The whiteboard is a useful tool in recording the day's activities and the answers to repetitive questions. The calendar clock is a very useful tool to orient your loved one on the day, the date, and the time, and remind them of upcoming appointments. The communication cards are a great tool to bridge the gap when they can no longer tell you what's wrong. And then there's the pill minder for when your loved one is still able to take pills but needs prompting. The final tool I want to share with you is the memory book. It tells your loved one's story. It's a great tool for distraction, redirection, also as a conversation starter, and telling you where they are in their story so you know how to answer their questions. Music is probably the most powerful tool in your toolbox after laughter. Music is a way to maintain connection. It sticks with your brain longer than any other thing, including reading. When you're having an issue with somebody, you can play their favorite music if you move them to another room, something that makes them happy, or you can start singing songs together from their childhood. These are some of my favorite books for caregivers. My show airs on the third Tuesday of every month, and you can view past episodes on YouTube. Thank you, everyone.
This program has been brought to you in part by Tracy Cram Perkins. Connect with her and order her book at tracycramperkins.com. For more information about Alzheimer's disease, support resources, and how you can help, contact the Alzheimer's Association at 1-800-272-3900 or visit their website at www.alz.org. They offer 24/7 helpline support and a wealth of information to assist you and your loved ones.